Hello, my friends. Welcome to Two Priests on the Patio podcast. Here we gather in the quiet space between science and soul with Reverend Canon Ward and the Venerable Jeff Ward, partners in ministry and in life. We ask the deeper questions. What does it mean to be awake in this world? To suffer, to doubt, to believe, to begin again and again. This is a sanctuary for conversation. So come as you are. I'm so excited. I'm Che, and today, how should we start today? I mean, we don't have to be formal. We could just get right into it, right?
Always.
I'm afraid to ask.
I'm wondering if we can continue on our journey with The Awakened Brain by Dr. Lisa Miller. And one of the things that she really explores in the book is this idea that depression and despair are the beginnings of awakening, of a deep awakening. What do you think about that? How do we talk about that?
So I think she is specific to experiences at certain times in our lives. She talks about how there's sort of these threshold moments, like when we're in our late teens or when we're in our midlife. You know, some people call it a midlife crisis, but in fact, it's a midlife opportunity, you know, for change. And it's like we're getting a nudge at that time, and we're experiencing kind of a discomfort, and perhaps we're more emotional or more in tune. But I think it's about how people who have spiritual practices and a sense of community and belonging and a connection to the transcendent make sense of challenging times. And instead of it being a time when they become bitter or they fall apart, that actually going through difficulties, whether it's a loss or a disappointment, it can make people feel down. They might feel, somewhat depressed, but they come out the other side having learned something. So they've kind of fallen, but upward. So it's actually a time of increased consciousness and transformation that happens within. So certainly it's difficult in the moment, but it can actually make people stronger and healthier and more resilient and less likely to experience clinical depression or anxiety disorders long term.
So I wonder, though, if we are hardwired for spirituality and spiritual growth, why is it that some of us, when experiencing depression, will feel the kind of despair that causes you to feel maybe suicidal or to feel like your life has no value? Like, if we are hardwired for this awakening, why don't we all experience it?
Do you want to take this one? Or?
Well, how about I take a stab and then you can fix it after I finish? I would, I think when people are, let me put it this way. Dr. Lisa Miller talks about, when we get stuck in our achieving awareness, we can definitely fall into despair because we can get that sense that we can never achieve enough. Or we achieve that next step, but then someone gives us the next step and the next step. We've talked often about people in our lives who are struggling, and their struggle is because they can't figure out what they should do next, or the people around them, they believe, are telling them that they should take a certain path that maybe doesn't feel right for them. And I think when we talk about people who are in despair, they are desperate. And I think as we get older, we might be more open to our awakened awareness. In other words, something spiritual, because we are desperate. We're looking for anything, a kind of a sense of direction, a meaning, a purpose, because life just doesn't make sense. I get up in the morning and I run around and I do all the things I'm supposed to do, or I'm trying to accomplish all those things, all the demands that people have on me. I can't seem to accomplish them all, but I also have that sense there's got to be something more, right? It can't just be, the hamster wheel, right? I just keep going round and round and round and keep trying to accomplish and never fully achieving. And because of that, I think we get a little wiser as we get older because we experience more. But I do think it opens doors for us, or we may be open at least to things that would be, and many people pursue, as you are well aware of, mindfulness, anything that will help me to feel better and so on. And then I start to experience that, right? I start to feel a sense of relief through those mindfulness practices or spiritual practices. And once I've done that, I realize there are other opportunities, other ways for me to live, or as Lisa would say, to be, and not just to live.
Yeah, and if I can even perhaps delve more deeply into achieving awareness and awakened awareness, just to help elucidate what Jeff was speaking about. So often we
fix it. Yeah.
No, I just want to give some background.
Yes.
So that people have context for your very poignant and important remarks. So often in our society, especially, we are taught that we have to achieve, and it's right from the get-go of our lives. We have to earn good grades in school, and then we have to get into the right university, and there's what's next. We have to achieve and compete.
I think it happens even before that. Like, too many people we know who have young babies, and they're already measuring where do they fit in under the percentile, right, of growth, of when do they speak, and the measurement seems to happen like immediately after people are born.
So much pressure.
Yes.
Yeah. And it becomes all about us. We feel like life is all on us. We are carrying the whole load, and if we succeed, great, but if we fail, it's all our fault and we're worthless. And so when we are using our achieving awareness only, or even primarily, I would say, we can feel a great deal of stress. We can feel rushed. We can feel like we are just on the hamster wheel. What's next? What
Right.
can I get? How can I keep it once I get it?
Yes.
Whereas with awakened awareness, we can create space, and we can know that we are not in this all on our own. We can say, God, what would you have me do? What should my day be like? What am I called to in life? How does my life interact with the lives of other people and other life on this planet? We have, instead of just a very blinkered view of the world, we have a much broader, open, spacious view of the world. So we can notice things. We can notice the beauty. We can notice the person who's reaching out to us with love or assistance or encouragement. And I think those two differing approaches speak to what you were asking about in terms of somebody feeling so despondent that they might actually be suicidal. Because I think when we're stuck in that achieving awareness, we feel empty. We hurt inside.
Deeply.
And we need to find a way to make that hurt stop. And I would assert that the way is to lean into our awakened awareness, and we do that by building relationships with God and with each other.
But do you think that you have to be trained and conditioned to think this way and ask these questions and be curious about your despair? Or can you be in a place of pain and then have a breakthrough?
I think you can, but I think more than that, some people are raised in families where they are naturally nurtured in terms of their awakened awareness.
Yes.
You know, there are spiritual practices. They are part of community. They are taught that other people matter, that, you know, you can stop and smell the roses. It's not all about competition and getting, you know, to the next goal. And so I think for many people, life isn't just about achieving.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the important thing is to find that balance between achieving and awakened awareness, but to let awakened awareness always go first. So it's like walking through life with both feet instead of like just jumping up and down on one foot.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
with the awakened, with the achieving awareness, but using both feet, and the awakened foot always goes first. So I'm open, you know, God, I'm in tune with you, and what are you calling me to? That's what you're calling me to. Now I'm engaging my achieving awareness to move in that direction. But even as I'm doing that, I'm still open, because sometimes the path turns and twists, and new people and new things are evident for us.
Constantly. But I wonder about, there's so much cynicism, right? Let's just speak about, I'm going to generalize about Canadian culture, right, or society, the larger society. There's a lot of skepticism and pessimism and sort of controlled emotion. And do you think that creates an infrastructure that doesn't allow us to ask these deep questions about, you know, why do I feel this way? How can I feel? Like, is there something more? Like, I need it to be concrete. I need to be able to see the thing that's going to make me better. I can't just sit here and feel it.
Well, I think, unfortunately, for some people, they have to really reach almost like a rock bottom of despair before they will allow themselves to be open to what we're talking about in terms of that awakened awareness, that whatever it may be. And it doesn't have to be religious. It just has to be some way of allowing yourself to be open to ways that can help you, right? That was why I was talking about mindfulness earlier, because for some people, that's the language that they can relate to. That will sound scientific. That will sound concrete to them. And that's what I think has been very helpful with Lisa's book, is that she's bringing that very concrete science to this idea of, as you put it, we are hardwired for that spiritual awakening. But sometimes it really requires a real desperation before we will allow that to happen. And you're right. The society around us typically doesn't want to talk about that, doesn't want that to be something that we should focus on or we should be open to. We would often call woo-woo, right? You know, that
Yes.
Instead of it, and certainly not the thing you get taught in business school or science or anything like that. But I believe that when we cross paths with someone who opens that door for us, then people will find, people I experience anyway, will be open to that when they start to see results of relief, right? And that is concrete for them, regardless of what other people may say. And I think that hopefully most people will actually reach that point, and they'll be open to that, and they will encounter someone who can lead them on that path. What Lisa calls trail angels, right? People who can help you on that path, and you just have to cross paths with them at some point, or else you just keep suffering.
What do you mean by relief? Like, how would you describe the feelings or the sensations of relief?
Well, I think for me, relief is a sense of connectedness with others, a sense of having some value and meaning and purpose in my life, feeling light, not like I'm carrying a heavy burden. And you know that feeling of being in the zone,
The flow.
in the flow. Yeah, I think that's a good way of expressing relief.
For me, I describe it as a sense of peace, right?
Yes.
Where that's why when I meditate, I find that to be so helpful, because if I can get all of that monkey brain chaotic thought, out of my head long enough, I feel a sense of relief because I feel a sense of peace. I'm not feeling like I'm being pulled in every direction and I'm trying to remember every last item on my to-do list. I'm open to just the sensations of what is going on around me, which is why it's so wonderful to go for long walks, in a big park somewhere where I can just relate to nature and just, feel that sense of that world around me, but not all the things that push at me and pull at me, every day.
Do you think that when you are going through an experience of depression or deep sadness, that's the time when you have to maybe also question not just the depression, but what is the spiritual meaning? Like, is that the time to say, is this a spiritual crisis that I'm experiencing, this deep depression? Because some may say that's not a good question because it's not, like, depression is a clinical, what's the right word?
Well, it's a clinical response. And I think what Lisa would say is there's different forms of depression, right?
Yes.
So chemically,
exactly.
A basis, in which case, medication is the most helpful response sometimes to that. But when it comes to, life's experiences or trauma or things like that, then I think she would say this awareness, this awakened awareness we're talking about, and the spiritual experiences are probably the most helpful way to deal with it. But you have to be open to it, and you have to allow yourself to experience that. And if someone can convince you to give it a try as a means of therapy, and you do experience that relief, then you can realize that, hey, there is something to this.
Well, what if you decide, someone's listening to this podcast and they decide, oh, I never thought about a priest as someone I could speak to about my depression or my anxiety. And then they go and they seek someone out. But that person does not have the knowing about the relationship between, your faith and spiritual pursuits and depression. They are equipped on the religious side, but in terms of, those tentacles of understanding that depression is a suffering, they may not have that understanding. So they don't get what they want from that person. What do they do? Like, is there, like, what should you do? Like, if you go to a church and you feel like, I feel rejected here, or I don't feel like I fit here, or I don't feel like this person understands me. What should they do?
They should go and see Sue-Ann.
Or you.
I think the best thing we can do when we feel down is to go and help somebody else. I really think that is a spiritual practice. I think that is the most healing thing. When we are connecting with somebody else and giving of ourselves to somebody else, we have a sense of worth. We have a sense of being part of something bigger, of making somebody else's life better, which feels so good, And I think that generosity of spirit is healing for me when I'm feeling down, for anyone when we're feeling down. So I don't know that it's always about, somebody else needing to have the answers. I think the answer is go help someone.
Lisa talks about it in formal terms. The way she talks about it is altruism. But she says that just like we are wired for spirituality, she says we're also wired for altruism. And so I know it can be really hard when you're feeling really down or truly depressed.
And you have no energy.
Yeah, and to say, I'll go and help somebody. But even the smallest actions can make a difference. And somehow we are wired that when we do that, we actually feel better. And so, as Sue-Ann said, and it can start feeding on itself. So the more I help, the better I feel. And that is one way for people to pull themselves, not to pull themselves, but to benefit and to feel some relief from that despair.
And we only have to do one thing, right? Like,
what do you mean by that? We only have to do one thing.
So sometimes, especially when we're feeling like we're carrying a heavy load or we don't have the energy, we feel like, oh, I can't do that. It's too big, right? There's all these things that I would have to do in order to be able to go out and help somebody. But we just have to do one thing at a time, because we almost always feel like we could just do one thing. And we do that one thing, and then we can do one other thing, and then one other thing, and one other thing. And then we've done something amazing, and we've made a connection with somebody else.
Right.
And we've seen the divine in them.
Do you think it makes us less lonely when we do?
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And loneliness, I mean, that is a huge disease in our society today.
Why do you think crippling. That is? Why do you think we, as a society where we've got so much information and people have so many different ways to connect, and then we get to see all these examples of what connection looks like, but yet people are more lonely now than, or at least they're reporting that they're more lonely now than ever before? People
need, though, connections that we don't get through, and I know we're doing this podcast, so apologies in advance, but it doesn't just come through electronic means and virtual means and social media, and yet that's kind of where we keep moving toward more and more instead of human connection. And that's why, as Sue-Ann was saying, I mean, just do what you can do. I know that sounds maybe trite, but find the thing you can actually do. So I don't have the energy to do, all these other things, but I could just do this one thing. And sometimes that's simply just being present with somebody else, but it makes a difference to them. If you're not in a place where you think you can have deep conversations with someone right now, then go and visit somebody who isn't able to communicate very well. Like go to a nursing home or something and just spend time with somebody. It matters to them. It makes a difference to them, and it can help you too. But start small, but just do the things you can do. But I think that just staying in place, you're just going to moved lower and lower, deeper and deeper into despair.
Well then, as spiritual leaders, do you ever feel lonely?
Honestly, I think I don't. I feel very fortunate in that I have a wonderful partner in life. I have a big family, good people, and a huge church family. So I feel that I'm really buoyed by a community of support. But I do know many people who feel lonely. And it seems like the bigger the town, maybe the more lonely we feel. Like it seems like in a smaller town, a smaller community, people talk to each other. They have to rely on each other more. But I find, we live in Oakville, and I don't know most of the neighbors on our street. Like, what a weird thing that we live so close to people and we don't know them. And so many people, they, pull into their garage and, the door goes down and they go in the house through the little door straight into the house. So they don't say hello to anybody.
No, especially since the pandemic, right? But I think, you can have a desire to be alone and need to be alone and not be lonely. But you can also be lonely because you're with people or surrounded by people that you are not feeling connected or grounded with.
Yeah.
We often talk about loneliness or being alone versus solitude. So I can choose to be alone, and I'd love to do that. So walking a labyrinth, for instance, and I can do that on my own, and I can be at one with God, not feel alone, but I can be in solitude, right? Or I can pray contemplatively and do that in solitude, alone, by myself.
Yes.
But I don't feel lonely, partly because of what Sue-Ann was talking about. I mean, being part of a community of spiritual people, it's really hard to feel lonely when you're part of that community. So, and I don't feel alone because I feel like God's love is always surrounding me, and I'm always having that presence with me. So, but I do think that people need to, allow themselves to be part of community, because I was just talking to one of our neighbors just last week, and what Sue-Ann just said is exactly what we were talking about. How can we be surrounded by thousands of people and not really know people, and really you can feel alone, because if you don't make those connections, then you will be alone. But it does require us to reach out to people, or at least be open to being in community with people. Yeah.
I feel like when you're lonely, you feel achy, like you feel like you're aching for something. I remember the first time I ever felt alone, like I can remember distinctly, or I felt lonely, was when I was about 11. And, my parents were divorced. I didn't grow up with my dad being present. And actually, if you asked me when I was a kid if that really bothered me, I felt sad that he wasn't there, but I didn't feel like I was missing out, because I had such a present parent and I had other people. But at the same time, now looking back, I think when you are a singular child, or you're growing up, I grew up in the 70s when we were sort of independent, you're the latchkey kids, you get the key, it's like, go home after school, don't open the door, and warm dinner up in the oven, but don't turn the oven on. So you're not sure how you would do that, and don't go outside, but then go outside, but don't, come back and, be safe, lots of contradictions. Anyways, but I remember feeling like, so if you asked me, did I feel like I missed having a whole family always around me, I would say no. I think it was really good to be independent and singular. But then also I remember feeling lonely from not being around people. And what I did was, that's actually when I started to volunteer. There was a seniors home in the community that I lived in. And so I just went there after school one day, and I asked if I could read to the community members. And they said, sure, we'd love for you to do that. And when I was about 11, I just started reading, and that became a way for me to feel less lonely. And there's something about someone who is also lonely and alone looking at you and feeling grateful that you're there. And I remember feeling that, and it was like an inoculation. Oh, this is what I do when I feel lonely. I give myself, or I give, not give myself, but I give of something of myself. And then that became part of my spiritual practice.
Yes.
So I'm always curious about what people do to be less lonely in the world.
And I think, too, it has a lot to do with having at least one very close relationship. Somebody who has your back, somebody who will help you bury the bodies, right? I mean,
that's interesting coming from a priest.
Yes, but we do that formally. Usually,
literally.
Usually in a cemetery. But
yes, literally.
But still not what I meant. But
won't
somebody
even let me save you, right?
that would do anything for you, and that you would do anything for, and I think we need to have that kind of relationship with a higher power too. And so many people don't, and I think that leaves a big hole and a lot
because
of
people
lonely.
can let you down. We know that, right? We make mistakes. We have failings. So if you have that relationship with a higher power, then you know that you can at least count on that, right?
Okay, but what happens when you say to someone, you can have a relationship with a higher power, with the Creator, with God, however you want to claim it, and they say, well, I need to touch it, I need to see it, because the mind in the Western world, in the North American world in particular we're talking about, is trained to see, to understand what we see is what we can believe. And what you're talking about is not seeing, but believing.
Do you want to get into string theory and try to explain how you can't always see things, but it doesn't mean they don't exist?
Well, I can't see the air between us right now, but I'm pretty sure that I can breathe.
Yes.
You know, I think people's expectations sometimes are unrealistic, and there's a lot of things that we can't see, but we can experience. And I think we can experience the love of God, and we can experience that sense of the sacred in our world, whether we feel like we see some old man in the sky, which is not at all my image of God, but I think we see God in the loving relationships that we have with others. I think we see God in the way our world works.
Yes.
Everything works together. When we just don't mess it up, it all works beautifully. I think that's God, and that's evidence of God.
And I must say, it is very sad that we have created a society where we demand to be able to see and have proof of everything, and that there can't be mystery, and that there can't be an unknown, and there can't be something that I can't show you, but I could still experience, right? So it is sad, because that does lead to despair for people.
Yes.
If it isn't concrete, then it isn't real. And if it's not real, then what purpose does my life have? And meanwhile, there's lots of mystery and lots of as Sue-Ann would say, things that you can't necessarily show, demonstrate, prove, but it still exists. It's still real.
Yes, yes. And there's so many symbols that we maybe can't fully understand, but show up in our life to confirm that we are part of something greater than ourselves, right? How would you identify something that's symbolic of God that you might experience in the quiet, in the forest, or going for a walk, or going to the grocery store? And do you think that God just is there randomly in you, around you?
So I think God's in everything, right? I think God is enlivening us and all things. And I think that Christ is when, spirit and matter come together.
Yes.
And, it happened in a unique way in Jesus of Nazareth 2,000 or so years ago. But I think it's happening all the time in you and Jeff, in Jim and me, in everything that we can touch and see.
And experience.
Yeah.
And experience. That's the piece, the experiencing piece.
Yeah.
I mean, when you say I experience joy, I mean, can you wrap your arms around that? No, but you still experience it, don't you? It's real. It's real when you feel that sense, or a sense of euphoria, or and we were talking about always depression and despair, but there's the opposite of that, and it's real. But I challenge you to put that in a bottle and show me what it looks like, right? It's
And it happens from the youngest age.
Yes.
I was spending time with my 1-year-old grandson on Monday this week, and his first word in life is wow. He looks at things and says, wow. And isn't that amazing?
And I challenge you to spend more than 3 seconds with him and not feel joy.
Yes.
Life is delightful for him.
Yes.
Do you think that we, as a society, because we are not practicing a spiritual, we don't have a spiritual practice in our civil society, that we are getting further and further away from understanding how to look at the dots and connect the symbols and to be aware of this internal peace and presence? Do you think, I mean, I know I asked it earlier, but I wonder, can you experience God if you have no lexicon for it, if you have no vocabulary for it?
I think a lot of people in our society worship money and not love. And I think that's part of the problem. When that is what we are attracted to, when we are seeking money and power and prestige and things that never fill us, it's very problematic. But that's what we are being taught to work towards. That's what we are being taught is important. And so people are disposable. Relationships don't matter. We don't have to work at them. We don't have to offer forgiveness to people or compassion to people, right? And I think that if we can help to nurture people from the youngest age to value relationships and to see love, and I would say God is love.
Yes.
And to see that and nurture that between people, and not just people, but the animals in our lives, and I don't know, the plants we're growing in our gardens.
Yes,
and,
totally.
Every little bit in the patch of earth that we inhabit.
Well, this is so interesting. You said compassion and forgiveness. So would you say those are disciplines or principles for cultivating or caring for a relationship that makes us feel more whole or less numb?
I certainly think for most of us, we have to be intentional about it. So imagine you work out regularly and you build muscle and stamina and so on. I think you have to do the same thing with those attributes as well. You have to intentionally, especially when people around you and many in the structures of in which we work and live, they certainly don't value that, and they certainly don't want people to be talking about that. I think that's another reason why people are struggling with things like spirituality. We have a society where we've kind of driven that out of our you talk about lexicons, we've driven it out of our normal life and practice, as though, and I understand why people have struggled with church and religion and so on. But that does, the unfortunate outcome of that is that we have stopped talking about things that are spiritual. We've stopped talking about how those things are an important part of our living. So.
And it hurts me when I hear people say, like, something is unforgivable. Everything must be forgivable. Right?
Murder?
Absolutely. Forgivable. Terrible thing, awful, great harm, but forgivable. If we look at our Christian scriptures, Jesus forgave everyone, even the people who were murdering him. He forgave everyone, 100%. And so I think we need to find ways, because if we can't forgive, we can't maintain any relationship, because we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to hurt the other person.
Yes.
And I believe there's a difference between, forgive. You can forgive and not forget. You can forgive and not say, I'm going to continue to allow myself to be injured by someone who wants to keep injuring me, right?
Right.
So, and that, because what Jesus taught us was that when I'm not forgiving, I'm the one carrying the burden.
Yes.
Right? And so I carry that, I keep carrying it. So if I want to be released of that burden, then I have to forgive.
But it's also the practice of the attributes that sort of melt away some of the pain. That it's the practice of trying, right? That makes you able to come to forgiveness. Like maybe that's not what your first instinct is, but maybe when you're involved in the ritual of thinking about it, of reading about it, of talking about it, of trying to push further into it. Do you think that's what gets you to a place where you start to feel like, okay, this is the natural outgrowth?
and making it just part of your life, right? Forgiving the small things teaches us how good it feels and how successful we have been at maintaining a relationship. And so we can then deal with the bigger and bigger things and know how to respond to them in emotionally mature ways.
I wonder, though, do you think that is absolutely applicable to marriage? And I'm not asking for myself. Joe, don't listen. Don't listen. Joe, don't listen. No, but we have such a high divorce rate, right? And I think it's something like, it's a little over 50% now. And I feel like we're constantly being told why marriage isn't good, or, people who are married, they should sleep in separate rooms, and you should have separate lives, and we talk very little about the practice of daily forgiving each other and having compassion for your partner.
Having grace for people in your life, regardless of who they are, and honestly, the people closest to you. It's not whether they deserve more grace, but if you're going to continue to have close relationships, you've got to be able to offer that grace to each other. You've got to be able to say, I can let this go, right? I don't want us to keep repeating this because it keeps hurting, but I do want to let this go.
Yes.
Right? And as Sue-Ann said, starting with something small, but doing it regularly and doing it intentionally, you become much better at it. And things don't accumulate, because that's usually what ends up causing the greatest harm and rift in relationships, is that things just keep growing and growing to the point where you feel like there's no way we can overcome all of this baggage, right?
Right.
Having said that, we have both seen and experienced, relationships where even, the biggest baggage has been let go and people are able to move on in love. So Sue-Ann used what I would call one of the more extreme examples, Jesus, for forgiving even those who killed him
and betrayed him.
But he set a very high bar for us, and I'm not sure we can ever achieve the bar he established. But he's trying to let us know that if that is possible for me, those other things in your life that are much less than this should be forgivable, should be things you can move past. Yeah.
And I think also we have been taught the very opposite of what love is, and have been told that it is love.
True.
Love is not just a feeling. It is not attraction. Love is a decision that you make every day, every moment of every day, to treat somebody with respect and dignity and compassion and empathy. And we start out in a relationship with someone, and they make our palms sweat and our hearts pound. And
yes, you did.
and we expect that's what love is, and it's always going to be like that.
Yes.
It's not always going to be like that, because we wouldn't get anything done if it was, right?
Yes. Yeah, true.
That's why I struggle so often.
So eventually love becomes more of a friendship.
Yes.
And it's a friendship that we need to nurture and value, and not constantly be seeking that feeling again somewhere else.
Right.
And I think that's a mistake that many people make.
Yeah, they're vulnerable because they are continually maybe even picking at the things that aren't working, or the fragilities in the relationship, rather than, nurturing the things that need to be nurtured in each other. One of the things I find exciting about being married is, and I haven't been married as long as you both have. I think it's a couple decades for Joe and I think. Just kidding. No, I definitely know. It's a couple decades. And I like that you can get into a deeper space every time. There's a depth that you have after 20 plus years or more, that was impossible in the first 6 months, in the first year, in the first 5 years. And you thought you were in love then, but now you're in something else now. It's just really, it's really fascinating. I think it's a very interesting thing being married. I think it's not a bad thing.
I think it's a beautiful thing.
I think deep relationship is not a bad thing ever. Having a devoted, committed partner can be so important. And when that is truly the case is when you really are having a real struggle in life.
Yeah.
Whether it's a job or whether it's health issues or whatever it might be, having somebody that is, Sue-Ann said, has your back or is just walking every step with you can mean more than anything to people. So I think, nurturing that and continuing to make sure that is something that is going to be, flourishing and living on. Doesn't mean, by the way, that you can't still have romance after, 30 years together or 40 years together. I see people, in my life who have been married for over 60 years and they still have great, passion for one another.
Yes.
But there's also a depth of care and compassion that supersedes whether there is that deep romance, right? And it matters more to people, especially the older you get, to just know you've got somebody in your corner and somebody who is always going to be there for you. But that requires that sense of forgiveness on a regular basis, right? If you just keep holding out, or keeping score, which is another of the, the achieving awareness thing, right? Instead, you've just got to be able to let things go and be able to say, my relationship is more important than whether I win that particular argument.
So your partners in life and partners in ministry, what comes before your marriage? Does God and your relationship with this divine come before or after?
I think God is our relationship.
I'm sorry, that's the answer I'm going to give too. We can't separate those things. So it isn't about hierarchy in that case. Yeah.
Wow. I just think that's so profound. Can you say it again? Because I think that so goes against the individual pursuit, the achieving mind, the idea that there is a hierarchy. Can you express it again?
Yeah, I think God is our relationship. God is love. God is the bond that holds us and everything else together. And so it's not possible to separate the two.
Powerful.
Thank you.
Two priests on the patio. Sure hope you enjoyed the show. If there's anything you want to know, just ask. Two priests on the patio. Yeah.
Well, friends, thank you for being with us. If this stirred something in you, share the episode and subscribe. The path of awakening isn't linear. It's layered, lived, and often lonely. But you are not alone. We'll meet you in the stillness, in our prayers. We'll meet you in the questions. And until next time, stay compassionate, stay open, stay awake.